Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome to a very special episode of the Breaking Point podcast. It is number 50. It's been a long time coming. We also have a special guest joining us from the winning team of this past weekend's CDL Kickoff Classic. It's MarkyB. Very, pleasure for you to be joining us today. We've got the usual suspects here as well though. Lionman's here, Austin's here. Mark, how you doing? How you feeling? Another victory. Obviously, look, it's not a major, but I'm sure it still feels fantastic heading into the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think that going into the event, we wanted to use it as practice, trying to win to get as many games on stage as possible. So, we did that, and that's all I was really looking forward to going into the event. So, very happy about it, and obviously looking forward to the start of the season.
Fantastic stuff. Austin, how you doing? Obviously not the weekend you wanted. Didn't get as many practice matches on LAN, but still entertaining stuff, no doubt. And if anything, gives you guys kind of like some sort of strange underdog status going into the year, which is rare.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. I was, weirdly enough, I was actually kind of happy we lost because we lost last year as well. And it's like a nice little like kick in the ass before the season starts to, reach a new gear before everyone catches up,
Yeah, and you also lost right before champs as well. Came back, best team, easily ran champs. So I guess.
Yeah, we said it. I mean, this tournament is like what you get out of it. Like if you take it seriously and try to grow from it, it's like the best thing that can ever happen to you is like growing from it for stage one. But hopefully we can rebound because it wasn't too pretty. Obviously, only one series, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
How you doing, Lion? I mean, I guess you caught the games. You were saying it's for you, it was pretty good time zones.
It was great time zones, but I still I had to catch up on the Breaking Point YouTube channel with them highlights. The highlights that we post on our YouTube are brilliant. All the perfect plays, gives you a perfect recap of the games. And yeah, I would always go back and watch those. And great weekend at COD. I think we were surprised to see Seattle play so well. We didn't really know much about Toronto, so it's crazy that you guys came out and dominated for the most part. And then seeing FaZe get bopped out straight away it's exciting for the season because the storyline's already developing.
Absolutely. An exciting weekend on the whole. I was genuinely, for the first 5 minutes I watched Vanguard on the actual broadcast, I was like, wow, okay, this actually is way more enjoyable to watch than I found it watching people stream scrims. Like I could barely sit through 5 minutes of it, but watching it on stream was honestly a lot better. So I was happy about that. And yeah, definitely shout out Omar Dabs pumping out the highlights at 3 a.m. Really cracking stuff. The CDL started doing them as well, but nowhere near the same caliber. But yeah, Marky, let's start with the Toronto weekend. We'll dive into kind of how the team did in a bit more detail, I guess, as we kind of go through the rosters. But what's your kind of impressions of this result? Because it was said afterwards that you guys, you've been scrimming in Europe for some time, playing the best teams, struggling a bit, it seems, against maybe the Spanish guys. I don't know. I think Cammy mentioned playing some of the top teams over there. And there's obviously that Spanish team right now that's really good. So, yeah, I mean, kind of incredible because almost came into the weekend very much underestimated. People weren't really talking about you. Even going into the Sunday, it was like, okay, Toronto's there or thereabouts. But then when it came to finals time, people were like, okay, yeah, all of a sudden, Toronto's back in business, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, it's a bit difficult for us because we have a full European team. So, we're trying to balance giving players time at home during the off-season with, trying to maintain practice. I think going into the next season, maybe do things a little differently in terms of when we'd be out in Canada before Christmas and stuff like that. But I think overall, we're obviously very happy to allow ourselves to go back and spend time with our families. But then when we've been back in America, or back in North America, should I say, back in Canada, we've been sort of rapidly improving over the last couple of weeks. So obviously when we're back home in Europe, we didn't really know where we stood in terms of the other pro teams because we didn't have a chance to play against any pro team. London was, of course, and Charlotte as well. So we never really knew where we were going to be. But at the start, it was looking a bit rough. But we started improving as the scrims went on. So that's kind of how we felt going into the weekend.
Yeah, definitely expected, I guess. I guess another question I have really is that given the way that, let's say, Pred performed this weekend, and obviously I think a lot of people would say Clinics was the MVP. I'd intrigued to hear your thoughts on what you thought kind of from the team's perspective. Just what do you think about some of these guys like Real or Real or however it's pronounced, and Eric Boom and some of these Spanish guys? Like I saw Real tweeted out a contract signing gif. I don't know if that means anything, but do you think this could be some sort of turning point for some of these teams to say, okay, hang on a second, there actually is, even though we already knew that full well, but just with Pred and now the fact that this kind of solidifies this Toronto team as the best European team that's ever been created, and also the results speak for themselves. It's like, maybe other organizations will seriously start to take note now of some of these guys that are dominating these regions as genuine, championship winning players, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think Pred is an incredible talent. I mean, he's obviously been getting looked at for a couple of years now by all the teams, I'd imagine. I think he's been obviously a breath of fresh air to the league. He plays at an incredible high pace, which obviously everyone loves to watch. He's got a gunny on him. I think it's good POV and fun POV to watch. Sometimes a podcast where you have a flick across there and just watch it for a little bit. But honestly, no, Pred's been good, and I think that looking at the regions, Europe and Australia, New Zealand, etc., all those regions as a whole, I think that you're going to see more and more talent coming through, especially when you have more opportunities for these players in the league, and it's going to motivate more to try and do the same.
Absolutely beautiful stuff. So I think we just dive into it straight away. With I think firstly, I kind of want to talk about maybe 5-6 teams, and we can discuss the teams that they beat along the way a little bit. So we'll start with Seattle, frankly. Grand finalist at this event. They beat London handily. They took down FaZe, which didn't look likely after the first map, but they made it work. And then they took down New York. New York didn't quite look how good they did the first couple of days, but really impressed Austin at how this entire team looked. Frankly, not amazed, but I'm really surprised that Accuracy's been able to get these guys performing at this high of a level this quickly. Like I think we talked when this roster was formed that like, hey, okay, this team might be great 3 months down the line, but I was thinking at the start it might struggle a little bit, right? So the fact that like these guys are already performing at a really high level and Accuracy as well played great is really impressive. I wonder if there's kind of shades of World War II team caliber there when they kind of played the game in a, I don't know, World War II team caliber, they didn't really have as much slaying power, but they just understood the game better than everyone else at the start. Of course, these events now are like a month and a half later than those early ones were in World War II relative, so it might be slightly different. But yeah, obviously you've praised Accuracy a lot on the show before, Austin, so it was good to show him kind of backing up like his name there as one of the greatest leaders in COD, I guess.
I thought they were going to be amazing, like going in. I thought like maybe they might have some like stumbling blocks at the beginning of the year, but there's obviously like an immense amount of talent there, and it's just like how much like voice Accuracy has in the middle of the, like mid map to like direct them. And like I think everyone saw in the listen-ins that he did like an amazing job of directing traffic, simplifying the game for them. So it's just about yourself and like they don't have to think as much. So like he really simplified it, made the game easy for them, and like you saw like the success they had all weekend long.
Go Milan.
Yeah. I feel like that's a team I would love to watch scrim because I just want to see the dynamic between the different players. I know it's not possible when streaming scrims is obviously, I guess, bad for a competitive edge, but currently that team, and I'd love to watch Boston. Are they still streaming scrims, Boston?
I think they will be.
Yeah. So those two teams I feel like are the most intriguing to me because they're not two teams I expected to be fighting for top 4, and they seem to be that sort of caliber right now.
What do you think, Mark? Like, it's yeah, incredible how well they did. Obviously, you took them down to the finals. It was you lost map 1. The slaying power was immense there on Bacage out of Pred and Sib, especially game 1.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously, if you watched the game, we pulled out a 4th SMG for quite a bit of the Bacage. We were sort of just running at them at the start, and it was working pretty well. And then essentially it sort of fell apart towards the end. We were struggling to break kills, getting pieced up obviously by those guys. So yeah, they're obviously looking really good.
Yeah, just a couple of other thoughts really on Seattle, because one thing that I noted really is that the last couple of years we've had a lot of rookies come into the league, but not many of them really stand out as great personalities of the future, let's just say. You've got guys like Drazo, who I think has shown some promise in that sense. So this is the thing I think about a lot, right? Because like after Scump, Crim, etc. retire, who's going to go on the thumbnails, right? You need someone entertaining. Drazo potentially fills those shoes. I think that Sib and Pred especially, like not just are they great players, but also they not wear their heart on their sleeve necessarily, but they're not afraid to stand up and, talk some trash across the main stage and get their opinions out there and be known and tweet some stuff out that might be a little bit, controversial, right? It's entertaining, I think, and it's exciting for the scene. And obviously Mac, who is kind of a different personality, he, if anything, flew under the radar a little bit. Austin's just disappeared for some reason. Probably that's messed up the that's messed up the thing. I guess I don't know what's happening, but I'll still be speaking, so it's fine. I'll pass it to you, Lion, I guess. But I'm just gonna say, like, Matt kind of flew under the radar because it was Pred and Sib still in the limelight, and then Mac was actually frying until that Berlin in the finals. He dropped a 7. Don't know where Austin went.
Oh yeah, I guess I'll touch on like Pred and Sib. I agree with their character and like how they're big personalities. I think Pred, that kind of comes from the ANZ region. Like our region, if you actually watch it, it's very chaotic. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say egos, but there's not really much to play for. So there's a lot of back and forth and there's not real like much structure. But I feel those players can compete at the same sort of level. And I think Pred proved that. And so I'd love to see more ANZ players come through the ranks potentially and have a spotlight shone on them, because we haven't really had that exposure since, I guess, Black Ops 4, when Mindfreak were dominating like the amateur brackets. So I think I'm excited to see what comes for ANZ and see if we can get some more personalities involved in the mix.
Yeah, I think you can't deny, like, looking at Pred for the last couple of years, that the region he's been in sort of limited him to the opportunities that he could have got realistically. And I think that now, it's like I said before as well, the opportunities should hopefully come more for that region.
Yeah, same with EU as well. And I think that you guys are proving that. You guys are probably, I would say, well, you can't really deny it, the best team currently. Ran through the kickoff pretty easily, and I think you have a lot of talent there as well. We rarely see players from like Spain or outside of the UK getting an opportunity. I think the last time was really Heretics or like some French players that have come through like Hydra. But I think there are obviously more players that can compete on this level there, and the league's only going to get more dense at that rate.
Yeah, it's like
100%.
Kleenex just like, is there any other Danish players that like, does he know of any other Danish players?
I'm sure he does. He he keeps an eye on it. Like I keep an eye on Scottish players. I think that I honestly think that there is some out there, but I can't say I've watched many Danish POVs over the last couple of years, apart from Toby's.
And they were just like winning all the Counter-Strike dollars, so I guess they don't need another game.
Yeah.
I believe EasyMac's PC crashed. I think he told a story about how it was, I don't know if it was Selim or someone at FaZe was having an issue with the PC and they shipped it off to him. So that's why apparently it crashes many times a day. So he'll be back in business soon. Touch on London real quick. Didn't get to see much of them, frankly, because they played Seattle. We were like, okay, they kind of got bodied here. Turns out Seattle are actually really good. So can't really say too much about it. That's kind of why Single Limb was unfortunate in a way, but it is what it is. Like what first impressions? I mean, Nasty had a good series. Zero kind of struggled a bit. I do wonder what their future is really like, just because at the end of the day, they brought in Harry, I believe, as their sub. He's kind of like an AR flex type player. So if you're Zero, I don't know. If I'm Zero, I'm kind of watching my back a little bit, right? I don't think this team will make changes necessarily anytime soon, but I do wonder if it doesn't really work out. If Zero can't do what Accuracy's done, let's say, because I think they're different personalities, then so might have to change there. I think the talent is crazy, but up against Seattle, we kind of saw two teams that had been built very similarly, and one team's already hitting form and the other isn't, right? So that may be a sign of things to come, I guess.
I think
it's too early to say.
I was about to say that, yeah. Literally too early.
Yeah, I think that like looking at them in practice and looking at them as like who they matched up against, etc. I think that further down the line, obviously, if the results don't continue to be good, then they may look at it. But it's one match against Seattle who went on to the finals, and I think from like all things considered, London have performed pretty well in practice and look like a solid team on this game from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, because they had the issue of getting to the US as well. Like, when did Trey get to the US?
I think it was like a couple of weeks before Christmas because they ended up spending Christmas there because they wanted to stay in practice. So they actually like flew out a couple of weeks before, stayed over Christmas, stayed over New Year. So yeah, they've been there for a while.
So okay, and they've been competing pretty good. I haven't seen much of their scrim, to be honest. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think there was 2 players when we did like the round of interviews before that mentioned London in like their top 5 range. One was Temp from Paris, and I'm pretty sure Clinics as well said that London are there or thereabouts. Like, so that's the thing. We only got to see one series. FaZe, like, you know, they went 0-1 this tourney, so all of a sudden they're a D-tier team, right? So that's the thing. You can't tell too easily. You know, we do have to talk about FaZe. I do want to talk about FaZe, but Austin, I believe, is back in the Discord queue because right now it's Discord going through some issues, so they're only letting a certain amount of people on, so I think he'll be back in a few minutes. I don't know what's happening. Before we talk about FaZe then, let's discuss New York, because they had a pretty good run. They beat Boston round 1, they beat Minnesota. It's funny because I predicted on this show last week that Boston were going to beat them, but then when I actually did my predictions, I changed my mind because I thought that on LAN, in front of a crowd, things might be slightly different for the Boston guys, just the way those matches go, right, against Crim and Clay on the other side. Like, you know, you can feel that might go a different way in that type of environment. One thing to say, I mean, Crimsix on the SMG, he was looking really good. Can't deny it. He was one of their better players. I thought really it was a surprise in a way to see that the slaying from this team. That was kind of the crazy thing. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Mark, on this. Really, that like the fact that New York can so consistently, and Dallas did it a lot last year as well with Crim there, that they would get outslayed and still win. Now, I can't tell whether this is a good or a bad thing, really. Like, it should be a good thing, right? You can win by getting outslayed. But if you never outslay anyone, then you're going to get smoked. So it's tough because they won these series. A couple of the maps in these series, they won by being down a lot of kills, especially Minnesota game 1. They were outslayed by 22 kills and Precautions and won it. But in the Seattle series, their entire team got outslayed by 80 and they lost comfortably over the course of the series. So interesting one. I don't know what you think about that. It just seems to be a feature of Crimsix's teams lately that's how they play. But you can't really put a finger on it.
I mean, I think like at the end of the day, you can always say it's a positive thing. At the end of the day, if you're able to consistently win games that you're outslid in, you're clearly playing in a way where your kills are more optimal. You're able to get more from the game with less kills and positioning yourself in a certain way. So I think it's one of those ones where if you are to play that way consistently and you are to start picking up kills, you in theory should be able to snowball games and win by larger margins rather than narrowly winning a game where you've been outslayed. So obviously I think in an ideal world they would get more kills, but I think it just shows that they're playing the game in a very solid, structured way.
What do you think about Bocage, by the way? And do you think that outslaying on that map actually matters?
I think like the kind of stats on Bocage, like in terms of slaying and whatnot, could be sort of misconstrued a lot of the time because there's some hills where you're just literally getting blendered on and getting a majority of your deaths. So I think that is a weird map in general where you're consistently you go 4 dead like 3 times off the rip of the game, you feel like you're getting destroyed, and then you realise you're down like 12-4 or something. So it's it's really weird in that regard, but I do think that it slows down a little bit in matches. But at the end of the day, I'm not a massive fan of the map, to be honest with you. But I think that, yeah, it's not as bad in matches, I'd say.
Yeah, in the actual matches, it was quite entertaining. It's just a little bit too much. It gave me like advanced fear vibes. Which do you think? So what's the current respawn timer? Is there none? Because I actually
3.5, right?
I mean, do you think that could be upped at all, or do you think that's good for now?
Seems already quite high.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting as well how that would affect like the sort of spawn system and stuff that's going on right now as well, because that has an impact. So I'd say that I mean at the end of the day, 3.5 is probably about as high as I'd put it. To be honest, I don't know if I'd put it to 5, but who knows if it would work out well. To be honest with you, but I'd keep it 3.5. remove the catch if anything for another map, hopefully in the future.
Yeah, we can only hope. Like USS Texas is coming in, baby, but I don't know if that's going to work for Hardpoint. I'm afraid we don't even know if it is. It's a rumor. Yeah, what's your thoughts like in general on the spawns? Because I kind of agree that on that map, like I agree with both your perspectives. Lion, especially when you were like, it gets a bit too much. It felt to me like I was just kind of. I couldn't watch it the whole time. It was just too crazy. I would just have to take a couple of minutes break and then come back and look at it when it was like 200, 200 and then see what's going on. But yeah, people die and they spawn right next to the hill, and it just feels like when someone gets 4 dead, it's kind of meaningless. But also because there's no trophies, I don't know. What I want is a team to rotate, get a setup, and have like a 70% chance to hold the setup. Whereas right now, it feels like maybe partly because there's no trophies, maybe there's other reasons, movement, time to kill, I don't know. It feels like the team that's holding the hill has a really difficult time holding onto it because the other team comes in, chuck all the grenades in, and good luck holding onto it, right? Which frustrates me because it's not how hardpoint should be. I don't know if you feel the same or like how that could be fixed, Marky. I don't know.
Yeah, I think just when it comes down to it, there's a little sort of design differences that kind of make it impossible. Like we don't have a trophy system that would. Obviously, the nade spam stuff is obviously not the most ideal for viewing experiences, and just for playing. I think that in general it's not ideal. And then the map design itself, it's a very small map, and with the sort of squad spawn system, you're going to essentially have a high engagement game on that map on hardpoint, unless you, like you said before, change the respawn timer. But it only particularly impacts that map. Realistically, I'd say like the other maps are a lot more playable. I think that when you're getting more and more time with the game, people are learning how to sort of manipulate spawns and have a more consistent way of playing the game rather than before where it was kind of a little bit chaotic.
Mm.
Yeah, I think maybe it felt that way in Modern Warfare as well. I don't know, where there were so many spawn complaints, but a lot of pros have said that towards the end of Modern Warfare, they were pretty. It's pretty. At least they could predict most of them what was going to happen. And if it's predictable, then you can play against it, right? Because there was an interesting moment at the end of your match against Thieves where they kind of had a questionable setup on that P1, where they probably should have won it. But we can talk about that in a few minutes. Wanted to mention quickly, Minnesota got 3-0'd. It wasn't like a dominant 3-0 by any means, but they didn't win a map, and I thought that was kind of not concerning. Obviously, we talked about London. Does it really matter? But just interesting because it felt like New York weren't maybe fully prepared for this tournament as they might have been. Against Seattle, they got handled pretty handily. But yeah, ROKKR weren't able to take a map off them. They had their moments, but definitely wasn't the swiftest start for that team just because they were one of the teams that got the bye. I do wonder if you think, Lion, that had any impact just because the only team that had a bye that actually won their match was you guys, Toronto. All the other teams lost, which makes me think maybe there's either a momentum thing or it's like the other team had one extra series to play on LAN. So, bit better practice in that setting because people saying that it's different on the stages than it is backstage. Classic COD. So, yeah, what do you think about that, Lion?
I would assume that did make a difference, and I think I chose in predictions for the most part the teams that played a first round. I think this year it does make an extra difference for that tournament alone because the seeding comes from last year's game, and it doesn't really decide or it doesn't show who's actually at the top right now. So these teams who played in the first round could actually be at the same level, if not better than these second round teams. But from the second round, I feel like, yeah, ROKKR looked poor, FaZe looked poor. OpTic obviously had their moments, but they got outplayed. And then Ultra just played really good. But I think out of all those teams in the first round, Florida's probably, I wouldn't say the most beatable, but might be the most beatable.
Yeah, what do you think,
I mean,
Marky?
Yeah, I think that realistically, like you said, and I said earlier on today as well, I think that as we went on, we improved as series went on, and I think that, like you said, I think realistically, Florida are a good team. But maybe if we match up against Seattle round one, it's maybe like a little different. I think we improved as we went on, and I think that was our key really. And I think that if you ask any competitor that's in this league right now, that especially at the start of the games, you do improve such drastically just playing those little matches that sort of you get that one or two things out of your system that maybe lose you a series further on down the season. Yeah, and you really sort of narrow down those little mistakes. You can improve a lot in a fast pace of time.
Yeah, so Boston, also a team that New York took down. A really great first series for the New York-Boston rivalry type thing. I'm not particularly familiar with American sports, but I understand New York-Boston, I guess geographically they're kind of close together. I'm sure that's a good rivalry. They were certainly bigging it up as if it was, so I'll take their word for it. And it started off hot. I mean, I thought it was impressive. The Capsule like highlight moment, I think, was one of the more memorable ones of the weekend. The casting was great, the crowd was great. I thought it was just a fantastic moment overall. People were talking about that, right? Like, is that part of the way the game was played? Because it felt like New York didn't even know where he was, and I think frankly it's probably their fault for miscommunication, stuff like that. But yeah, just more rookies coming into business, right? Like he gets that piece, they win the map, get super hyped about it. Obviously, the search and destroy they lose, and I think that's where you guys had a lot of strength this weekend. Actually, was when it came down to like a crucial search and destroy. Right on the button, right? But yeah, first thoughts, I guess, on Boston line. They looked okay. Methods didn't have a great series. Capsule, I guess, had maybe the most standout moment, and especially against a team like New York, which their slaying this weekend wasn't really great by any means. Map 1, I was kind of surprised to see that it was Crim and Clay taken over in the slaying as opposed to Hydra and Neptune. So I feel like with time, they probably get significantly better. And Boston, despite looking good in scrims, couldn't quite put it together on the main stage like a team like Seattle did. I don't know if that's like a kind of personality thing or just new thing or whatever. It was a 3-2. It's a single elimination tournament. It's tough to say.
That's what we're going to say. I feel like it's hard to get a gauge on any of these teams so far, apart from maybe Toronto and Seattle, because it is so early on in the season with this preseason event. I think across the season, they should improve. And if you looked at like scrims and what the pro players are saying, Boston have been considered like an S tier level team. So I've got a lot of expectation for them. I just think they came out the gates pretty slowly. First event on LAN of the year, and if like most of the league is online, maybe that suits them at the moment. But we don't know yet. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, and if you look at their team as well, they have players that have never really been in those environments before on the main stage with fans in front of them. So, I mean, they're only going to learn through time. So I think that, like you said, from when we've played Boston too, I think that we would echo that too. They're a very strong team, and I think that Capstone and those guys are only going to get better as time goes on.
Agreed. Wait, Rab, I've got a question. Do you know any New York versus Boston rivalry?
Like I mean, I don't know any of the team names.
Celtics versus Knicks?
I've heard of the Knicks.
Yankees?
Okay, Red Sox Yankees I've heard of. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that the Red Sox were the Boston team.
Okay.
But you know, good. I've heard of it. I mean, the Jets, New York Jets, that's a team, right? Like that's.
Don't go there.
I've heard of that one. Yeah. It's an OD Rab in the chat, but like, what do you expect me to do? Crane follows all these American sports for some reason. I don't understand it. We're going to talk about the snipers real quick. Because Clayster had a Kraken 1v2, one of the plays of the weekend, really nicely played. I feel like every sniper play over the weekend, there was kind of this cloud hanging above it as like, oh, is that going to get the snipers G8 or something? I'm intrigued to hear perspective here because from my perspective, it really didn't seem like they were overpowered at all. I've seen way crazier things happen in other games. There were a fair few hit markers. The smokes weren't even often particularly used to counter the snipers, to be honest. It was a lot of outside battles. There were certain situations where someone would just pull out a sniper to counter snipe an angle, and kind of because of the peeker's advantage, they would actually win the fight. So it's not like some people were saying that, okay, if you get a sniper on a defense, hold an angle, there's no way you're ever going to lose that fight. But in reality, you potentially can counter snipe, or you can just avoid the guy and go to the other bomb site, which was also a relatively common tactic. And trying to retake with a sniper is not going to work, apart from the fact that the pistol is very good, which if the pistol is worse, I think that, maybe would make things a little bit more balanced. But it was interesting one. Also, flinch, I thought, if you get shot one time, like, you're probably not going to hit the shot. So despite there being aim assist, I didn't see like so much evidence to say that it was crazy OP. I don't know the stats on how the players did that had the sniper this weekend, but at least going into the Sunday, I saw some stats that like the average sniper player KD was like a 0.9 or something. So it wasn't like they were taking over every single game line.
Yeah, I felt like it was pretty okay. Last year it was obviously a lot worse, especially with smokes. And we didn't really get the opportunity to see it. But I feel like this year so far, because of the stigma that's been around sniping, it's kind of come into this game with the not the best reputation, if you will. And I don't feel like it dominated more than a season like Black Ops 4. Do you think the pistol is better than the semi-automatic pistol from Black Ops 4? Like, that gun was just like a pocket SMG, pull out and just destroy people. Or simp with like the single shot.
Sim was unreal with it.
Yeah,
Sim was so good with that Black Ops 4 pistol.
Because I'm strictly a viewer. I'm a competitive COD fan. I don't really play the games as much as I used to. And so in my perspective, all I just want to see is entertaining gameplay, and that adds like a new element that we haven't seen since, I guess, Modern Warfare. But last year I missed it a lot, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think the snipers are good for the game overall. It obviously adds a different layer to strategy, etc., which I think is good. I think they could be obviously nerfed a little bit to make them less OP. They are easier to use than like old snipers, I think, from just mild personal experience of it. Using it in pubs and stuff too. I think that is a little easier, but at the end of the day, I think it's here to stay, and I think that hopefully they remain in competitive COD right now, because I think it, like I said before, I think it adds another layer to strategy. But the smoke's obviously not ideal. You see one ways, all these things, which obviously comes as a part of it, which can make sniping a little less viable when you've got smokes that can sort of be manipulated in a certain way. Not, like you said, not even used to counter against a sniper, when other teams may use it in that way. So it kind of makes the game a little bit more shitty.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I mean, the smokes are so annoying. I don't know why they decide to do this. Like, why can't they just do a CS:GO smoke? I know, obviously, the CS:GO smokes almost look stupid because they're just so opaque, and there's no way an actual smoke grenade would look like that. But it's incredibly consistent, which is what you want. But I guess consistency is apparently boring according to developers. But maybe things will change in time. I still do want to come back to FaZe, but I think Austin's still in this Discord queue, so we'll give him another few minutes here. We'll go on to Thieves, because they defeated Paris and then they took down OpTic. Now, actually, before we talk about Thieves, I just want to touch on Paris real quick, because given Thieves' run, do you reckon Paris is somewhat better than I guess we thought? I mean, they took the control, I think, against Thieves. They looked okay in the series. It might be another case of like London, really, where they kind of get beaten resoundingly, but they played actually what turned out to be a very good team. And I think Thieves were another one of those squads that kind of improved over the weekend. So we didn't really get to see all that much of Paris, but I know that Temp was talking in the interview that like they're looking good, they're trying their best. And I think there's actually a lot of like potential takeover talent there, but I still feel like it's a roster where if they win one series, they're just going to lose the next one. I feel the same with Florida, to be honest. They didn't even get to win one here. They played a good team line.
Yeah, I with LA, they looked really good. I feel like the OpTic series really showed that they've got a lot of metal. Like Envoy in that situation, I think that's what everyone was looking at, was him choking against his old team. But it seems like that's an OpTic curse in itself, that when a player leaves, they knock out OpTic. But touching on the Paris series, I didn't really see too much from them apart from in the control. I feel like they're another one of those teams that it's too early on to really say. They only played 4 maps. But yeah, I think potential wise, I've heard a lot of good things about them, and they're only getting better. And I think with time they'll get better. But the season usually does shake out, dropping like 2 or 3 teams to the bottom that aren't quite on the same level. It's like the upper echelon. And currently, I feel like how it's looking, that could be them, like one of those top 12 teams. But that's just personal
Top
bias.
12 in the world, baby. It's not too
Yeah.
bad.
I mean, it isn't bad, but it's just not what they need.
And when you don't spend any money, what do you expect? And when you don't pick up Hydra and Preds, or yeah, that's right, those two. What do you expect?
They do kind of have the scraps, but yeah.
I don't have scraps anymore though. Gutted.
No. The scraps without scraps.
I was going to say that, you beat me to it. God
I'm
damn
too
it.
quick on a draw.
No, but I think LA Thieves are like, they've been improving a lot over each match. They are one of the only teams that have to play like a kind of massive disadvantage online, I'd say, because they're playing from LA. which means they're probably playing on like 50 plus ping on every scrim they play. So they're playing a completely different game to the likes of the Texas versus Texas teams when they're playing on like 10 ping. And we play most of our scrims on Atlanta server against Texas teams, which is like 35 to 40. And even then, that's not that ideal, but I can't imagine what it must be like for LAT, who obviously are coming to LAN events like, oh my God, these guns feel incredible.
Like, I wanted to know, because your team's probably one of them that is slightly affected by ping. Do you reckon that helps when you go to LAN? Like, has that helped you perform better because of how good it feels?
Yeah, I mean, especially when we're playing on, like, it depends on the servers and stuff. We've been practicing on Atlanta server recently, but like when we're playing in matches and stuff, sometimes it depends on where that location is. Right now, it's obviously impacting us in a positive way because we're pretty much the majority of our scrims playing at a slight ping disadvantage, so it's helping us at the minute.
Mm.
I think the Thieves, like, I don't know exactly what the plan is because, of course, they're playing from the compound practice and stuff. I think Kenny may have said that they're going to go to Texas for like their online league games or something, which to me logistically sounds like a nightmare, but fair enough if it works because those games obviously do carry some significant importance. I think they play all their scrims like off host as well, so that might be one of the reasons why they were seemingly quite underrated compared to how they actually performed. I mean, Draza had some great highlight moments. That one map, it was actually against you guys, wasn't it? That one map he played on the controller in 38 and 20, that was phenomenal. That like 9 streak he had. And Kenny and Octane were a treat to watch. I feel like I haven't seen. I think it was good to see Octane back in. So we know what Kenny could do, but it was good to see Octane back in a team where he was getting kills and it felt like the kills had importance and his team was actually winning the map, you know, because it's been frustrating to see Octane. Yeah, okay, he's frying and dropping good numbers, but they're still losing anyway. And it's like, you know, is Octane just sitting back there, relaxing, dropping a 1.4, which probably was the case a bit in Modern Warfare. This year it feels like there's a lot more impact, right? And they looked really good, especially in hardpoint. I thought they were really solid. Maybe the best hardpoint team this weekend, frankly. It was just the search and destroy that Toronto had in the bag. And then there was that one particular hardpoint I want to dive into, really, where it was against Toronto. We'll talk on OpTic in a second. But I don't know. What do you think about that, Mark? Because it was a weird situation where they could have rotated to P1. They decided to attack the final hill anyway. Cammy got like a 4-piece because they were just running into him. Maybe that's a good play. Like if you do break it, then and breaks are relatively easy in this game compared to previous games, then maybe it's a reasonable strategy. But if they just rotate, they probably get a bit of setup. They still win the fights anyway on the rotation somehow. And then all you guys are off spawn. I think like Octane got out of the hill or something, and then Draza was like watching the back where the church is or whatever it is. And for some reason, they just weren't looking front, and you guys just flooded in and win the gunfights, eventually win the game. It was a weird one because you got very lucky to win that, it feels. You're on mute, by the way.
Oh Jesus Christ! My bad. No, I feel it was the right call from them to hit the old hill. I think that, like you said, they had enough time to die, lose that fight, and then spawn up and like have an advantage at the rotation with 4 people anyway. So I think it was the right call for them to hit the old hill. I think it just came down to, like you said, the setup at the end was the key. If they'd put a bit more priority on our side of the map, it would have been obviously a little bit harder for us to break in there. So realistically, it honestly came down to their setup, like you said, and they rotated there early enough, won the initial fights, and if they won one more wave, then that was it,
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk OpTic then, because they were the first team that Thieves beat in their run. Lots of talk about this squad because, like, so much discussion going in about how good they were looking in scrims and all this. And I caught, like, at the end of the day, these type of grudge match series when it's Envoy versus OpTic is always going to be entertaining. The way that he made the 2 flanks in a row on his final 2 lives, despite having a shocking series statistically up to that point, gets like 5 kills in those 2 like rounds or like 2 lives that he had. Pretty much winning them the game on that final hardpoint. It was a really interesting series. I'm not really sure what to think about OpTic because to me, it felt like they had very, I don't know, they were real eerily similarities, I guess, to last year in a way that they came out kind of good on the first hardpoint game 1. They then get pretty drastically outplayed. And again, like, it's a kickoff event, it doesn't really matter. But again, last year, the amount of times we talked about OpTic's vetoes and how they could have been better. Yes, okay, OpTic have been great on that map, but from what I've seen, this is the same thing that OpTic did last year as well. That yes, they might be really good on a map, but they'll play the opponent who's also really good on that map. They won't think about what their opponent's maps it is. They'll just think about what they like. And I think we saw it towards the end of last year when they would play like Checkmate and stuff up against you guys, Toronto. Because OpTic are really good at Checkmate, but towards the end of that game, probably don't challenge Toronto on Checkmate. That's just how it goes. It felt kind of similar here. Of course, it's really early doors, but LA Thieves, at least in what I've seen, really love Gabatu. And OpTic obviously like it as well. And obviously, okay, they challenge them on it, they lose it, whatever. But I think maybe smarter vetoes there might win them that map. And then I don't know, they kind of look shell-shocked in a way. I don't know. I was just looking at the body language. They just kind of sitting there. There wasn't much communication. Then, Scump had a pretty poor series. The rotations, especially on that final map, were kind of questionable. There was a lot of team kills going down as well. So it was definitely an interesting series. I'll pass it to you, Lion, but I kind of feel Rambo might be very key for this team from kind of the mental perspective, because I thought it was strange that despite 2 players being changed, they're seemed eerily similar, I thought, to some of the issues we saw last year, frankly.
Well, I think with the vetoes, it's kind of tough because there aren't many maps to choose from. There's 4 hardpoint maps. And so I feel like they've picked a map based on what they're most comfortable on and not really thought about their opposition, because who really knows in that environment who's good at what map, because a lot changes. With OpTic, though, I feel like their potential is insane. And throughout the early part of this year, before this tournament, they were performing so well on online. Do you guys follow, what is it, CDL Scrims? What is it?
Yeah, Scrumentel is the account. Yeah.
Scrumentel, yeah. He, like, seeing all the maps and like seeing exactly how they've been playing online is encouraging. It just seemed like, they got beaten out the blocks in this match. And in that last hard point, when things came down to it, they weren't watching the flank, and Envoy pulled off one of his iconic plays, as always. But what are your thoughts on OpTic so far, Marky?
Yeah, no, I think that it's hard for us to say because we have generally not played OpTic this season yet at a scrim or anything. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have any opinions at that level, but just from watching them, I think that, obviously when they were streaming and different points throughout the weekend, I think that it's a bad series from them. I think they're a good squad, and I think that undoubtedly when the season kicks off, I think you'll see a different team, and I'm not expecting them to go in and start losing a bunch of games and all that sort of thing. I think it's definitely a weird situation at the weekend with a lot of teams. Everyone's trying out different map sets too, especially in the first couple rounds. I feel like people were being a bit more trying out different things, whereas when it got to the semi-final finals, then teams are like, okay, let's try and win this now, sort of thing. So I think there was that sort of thing going on too. Teams not wanting to show too much on the S&D early doors.
That's a fair point as well. Can you touch a bit on the whole not having scrimmed OpTic situation? Because, I don't know, I heard some weird stuff about this, that somehow there was some blacklisting going on. I didn't really buy any of it, but I don't really, can you explain at all why that's the case? Because it seems strange to me that you guys haven't scrimmed each other.
Just pure coincidence. We used to play them loads last year. Generally, there's no reason behind it. Just so happened that every time that we were scrimming or we had one booked against them before we went back to the UK for the holidays, something happened, they had content or something along those lines. Since we moved back, I believe we might have had one scrim against them that was booked that had to be cancelled for whatever reason. So we do book scrims against each other. There's just been things that have happened or our schedules haven't aligned. But there's no reason on our end, at least as far as I'm aware. I booked the scrims, so.
Yeah,
I'm definitely aware that there's none of that on our end, and I don't think there is on theirs either. So yeah, it's just pure coincidence.
I buy it. Unless they're deliberately saying, "Oh, it's a content day today, lads. Sorry, gotta cancel this one." Other thing, a lot of people are talking about it in the chat about the whole who snipes, right? And this was a topic that was brought up yesterday. Dashy said on stream that at this event, Illy was sniping. We know that Illy and Dashy, mechanically, both unbelievable snipers. But there was one search and destroy map played, right, where Octane generally got the better of Illy. He was kind of killing it on the defense. Illy maybe got a couple of shots in. Octane hit maybe 4 or 5. And that made some impact in some of the early rounds. And there was immediately some talk about, okay, like, should Dashy be the one to pull the sniper out? Because fact of the matter is, in all of the, when Dashy's been around, Black Ops 4 especially, the amount of insane moments that came from Dashy's sniper were unparalleled by pretty much any other player than Simp, basically. So most people said, okay, put Dashy back on the sniper. It seems they agree. I think that is the plan going into the start of the regular season. And maybe the reason is just kind of the play styles. I think that maybe there's a thought that Dashy, when he's not using the sniper, he might play, I don't know, that maybe there's some ego challenge going on, or there's not playing as fundamentally. If he's using a sniper, he's kind of, he's locked in, he's ready to hit a shot. Whereas Dashy's comment on Illy, where that he reckons that Illy's the best search and destroy player he's ever seen, and he's better off not using a sniper and just roaming or doing whatever else he wants to on the map, so he's not restricted in the role. So to me, that makes sense. We only saw one map, of course, of them using their current setup, but it seems like they're going to change it. And I think that, to me, seems like a sensible choice line, just because Dashy on the sniper, we know Illy's talented. He hit some great shots in Modern Warfare, but Dashy's someone else.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we just look at Dash in BO4, it was kind of insane what he could do with a sniper. And with Illy in the same game, doing wages and S&D tournaments, that guy, the routes that he runs, the reads that he makes is pretty insane. So I could imagine that they'll swap that just for the next event, even just to try it. But yeah, I think that team could be really solid in Search and Destroy. It just seems like after that one map, they couldn't get it together. But later in the season, they should.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense for them. Illy is known to communicate a lot. I think he's obviously got that chemistry with the shots he already built up, so I think it makes sense to have them sort of, roam around together a lot more.
So let's talk Toronto. I'm still hopeful that Austin will get back with this. He may, I think he's still in the queue. We'll see. But anyway, we'll talk Toronto briefly because we did obviously touch on your victory. Massive congratulations. Thoughts on exactly what was the keys to victory for you guys? Because it felt like, again, the teamwork was just impeccable. Search and Destroy especially, Clinics have already gassed him up a bit, but his play in Search was just so impactful. It's incredibly difficult to overstate how he can just run into a site, get a 2-piece, and even if he just gets one, that's great work done. When he was getting an ace in like 15 seconds on Bakaj, it's just outrageous. So again, it felt like the Search and Destroy was kind of what separated you guys. I don't know if because you were saying, saving stuff and certain teams might have been, whether it's just the fact that you've been teaming together for quite a time at this point, like almost a year, right? With this group of 4 players, never placed outside of top 3 with this roster. Like the placings are absurd. First, third, second, first. So yeah, like, I don't know. It almost felt like you were getting underestimated despite, the teamwork and Search and Destroy prowess that is still there and got you over the line.
Yeah, I think that our fundamental, the way we play together is always going to be there, and that's the way that our team is set up as well. Like, I think we have a bunch of good S&D players, so I think it's going to be a struggle for us to be bad at S&D a lot of the time. And the way we practice and prepare for S&D, I think that allows us to be really good in that game mode, and that's always going to be there. So I think that's obviously going to be underestimated because over the last couple of months, it's just been a lot of hard point scrims and control more recently, etc. So, last season we were like kind of an okay hardpoint team. Realistically, we weren't like a top 2 hardpoint team statistically. So that was sort of how we've always been. We've always been a very strong search and destroy squad.
Welcome back, Austin. It's a pleasure. Go online if you want to add something.
What do you think it is about your team makeup that makes you guys so good at S&D naturally?
We've got a sort of perfect mix of players. Everyone does sort of plays the game a little differently. Cam likes to make individual plays and has a very good read on those. Toby and Ben work really well together, and then you have that sort of backline and Jamie, who's always sort of reliable in the clutch situations, like the 2v4 that having cammy pulled off, and you always trust him when he's in those situations, and those are key. Like when you look at any team that wins in Call of Duty history, there's always those like little clutch moments where it's not just them being a great team, it's like one guy being individually better than the other players that are playing against.
How's it going, Austin? You had a good break sitting in the Discord queue. That was good to see. We've talked to most teams. We did say FaZe, though, because we don't want to still touch on FaZe. We'll talk about quickly who Toronto beat, or who Toronto could have beaten. Well, you played Florida in the first round. I was impressed at Florida in their first round matchup against LAG, especially the Bacage, right? The fact that pretty much everyone said, and I think understandably, that this team has a lot of AR players. Bacage is a map where, well, there's going to be a lot of SMGs get pulled out, as they did, but it's actually Skies who drops 45 game one. And it seems like those guys are Awakening very flexible. And Dave Paddy seemed to add a lot on the communication front, which seemed to be their biggest weakness last year as well. I think that, especially in a game this chaotic, communication is of a very high priority. So I was impressed with them. I wondered exactly because of course when Toronto beat them, I thought, okay, yeah, fair enough. But then when he went on to win the thing, I was like, okay, well actually maybe Florida were better than we gave them credit for. I don't know what you thought about that from your series.
Yeah, no, I think they're a good team. We certainly, don't take Florida lightly. Every time we play them, we know it's going to be a tough match. They're a team that throughout the last 3 seasons have always gave any team, FaZe, everyone a good series. So I don't think they're a team that can be underestimated. So I think they were obviously not as good as us on that particular day in that series. So don't think they're going to be a bad team throughout the season by any means. I think that they're going to be a team that's going to continue to cause upsets and be doing well at different events.
Austin, let's hear your thoughts, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, I thought Florida was pretty underrated going in, just because I think they're going to be a really good S&D team for a lot of the year. They have a lot of guys that are really good at opening up their early rounds and then clutching. So that equals a lot of like map upsets if a team is giving them, free chows. Like our team always says, like if you're over chowing Florida, you're gonna lose. Like you're gonna end up losing because Florida is really chow heavy, but they have a lot of gunny and they're really smart in how to turn those advantages into big leads. So that's like one of their biggest strengths. Like I think Awakening is one of the most like shooting straight flexes we have in the league. Like I think he's an amazing player when he is fully committed and like involved. And I think like Caesar is like one of those ARs that you just know what you're getting out of him in the back line. You're not going to have to worry. And he did an amazing job with the SMG this past weekend too. And then I just think as a unit they work really well together when they're all on, when they're all communicating, when they're all taking their challenges and being confident. So if they can keep that up, they're obviously going to be a real like threat to knocking off teams that should be beating them. So that's going to be like their story for this year. And I think if they keep growing and keep getting better at S&D and hardpoint, then they could easily be a really, really good team this year.
What do you reckon, Lion?
Well, it's crazy because last year they came in with a completely different narrative. They came in as like a challenger because in Modern Warfare they were, well, I guess at times they were dominant. And, we expected them to be that sort of team throughout Cold War. So coming into this year, I think we have an expectation of them to not be one of those top teams. And so I think they can upset a lot of these big teams. I just feel like they also won't be coming in with that, like not pressure on their shoulders, but it seems like they might be a little bit more free. They have better communication, might be less ego because they're not that top team anymore. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of hype around them, and I think that they could be one of those top teams eventually.
Yeah, so the other squad was LAG, who, of course, Florida took down. And to be honest, I was not particularly impressed, I'm going to say. Like, I know Asim dropped a donut in the game too, and they did win one of the maps, but it just felt like at times they just looked super lost. They were down 2-0 in the Tuscan control, weren't they? And then they reverse swept them in the control. They 3-2'd them. Then they lost game 4 anyway. So yeah, I don't know. Like, there has been some talk pre-season who is, who's going to be the flop of the year. And I think there was even some talk from Envoy and Nadeshot that their money was kind of on LAG to be that team. And I would feel bad for the organisation if it turns out this team doesn't work at all, because they really did try to actually build a good roster. But I'm just not sure, like, at least on early evidence. I don't, obviously it's very early days. But yeah, Austin, what did you think about LAG? Because of course we only got to see one series, but and they were, Gallus was tweeting after meaningless event, all this type of stuff. It just made me feel like not necessarily a mentality thing, but just the way they played the game didn't seem great. And people have been gassing up Hook and saying he's great, which is seemingly true. He's always going to be great. But I don't know. I'd definitely be concerned if I was an LG fan. I'll say that.
Yeah. So like my thing is like any player in the league can be great. Any player in the league can have good maps. It's all about consistency and how well you work with your teammates. Like that's something where if this LAG team can find consistency like throughout the year, then they're gonna obviously progress and get a lot better. If their chemistry isn't there, that was always like our red flag with them. If their chemistry is off, if they aren't clicking, if we go back to where they have one game where they're outslaying somebody by 30, and then the next game they're getting outslayed by 20, like it's obviously not going to bode well for their future. I think this team has a lot of talent and a lot of obviously veteran leadership there. I think Slasher and Gunless could be like one of the best like AR duos in the league, but they also have to work together and bounce off of each other and kind of feed off of each other on the map. That's something where obviously they're going to grow on. Their SMG duo, like obviously I praise Asem. I think he's like one of the better entry SMGs in the league. He's really selfless, but he also has to work with his SMG duo pretty well. So if this team like clicks, because obviously at this event they looked pretty fractured, but if this team clicks and finds the confidence and finds the ability, the chemistry that they might be lacking right now, which also comes with reps. I think they were one of the teams that took off some practice time. So obviously reps, playing these qualifying matches is pretty important. Being able to get into that environment again, that competitive environment. They're obviously going to get better as the season goes along. So, hopefully they're able to do that, find consistency, build off that chemistry, and we'll see them better in stage one, hopefully.
I don't know much to say about LAG, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, that's all I could really say either. I feel like I think that Mac hit the nail on the head there, and they're a team that I think has a lot of potential to improve throughout the season. Haven't seen enough of them so far, which hopefully isn't a common theme. Obviously, like I think they'll do better as the season goes on, and you'll see more sort of better results from them. I don't expect them to get like rounded, every event sort of thing.
Yeah, agreed. It's exciting, going into the year. 5 matches they'll play over the course of February, so it's good stuff. Let's talk about FaZe. We left it until Austin made the return. On cue, if your PC crashes again, I wouldn't put it past it. But I was kind of surprised that. Well, it was a surprising loss, given that map 1, you guys are fine. Like, this is Precautions. This is where the teams would. You'd think at least the team with better individual gun skill might come out on top, just because it's a very slay-heavy map in theory, even though it didn't necessarily turn out like that in practice. But Celium was taken over. He was popping pieces. Then things change up quite a lot on the Tuscan Search and Destroy, goes around 11. Sib, of course, the former substitute for FaZe last couple of years, comes up with a massive 3-piece round 11. There was some talk about the crowd or whatever, but fact of the matter is he probably checks the bomb regardless.
No, he would have checked.
Yeah, I don't think Arceus is ever winning that in a million years, really, with Sib playing it like he was. So, yeah, 1-1, and then all of a sudden, things turn around very quickly. And Seattle's control, this is actually one thing I didn't mention when we discussed Seattle, but their control up until the grand finals, where Toronto gave them a great run for their money, was dominant. They didn't lose a round of control, I believe, until the grand finals, which is pretty insane, especially given how good you guys FaZe were. Was it the Gabba 2 they played you on control in this particular series? Because they seem to really understand how to play that map and win offenses, which was impressive, because pretty much everyone was saying, wow, it looks impossible to win an offense, kind of, because the way the hard points are, or the way the control points are, but they made it work. And yeah, of course, FaZe go down. of course, exactly what happened last year, right? You lost the series to Florida. Look how the season turned out. As you say, kick up the arse to some degree to say, we're not infallible. Simp at a 0.8, which obviously won series, but I guess probably his worst ever performance at an event, even though probably doesn't really count it if you look at the stats on the course of it. He was talking about the fact that like the fabric grip is good online, but on land you want the stippled. So all this type of stuff that these pros are still figuring out. But if anything, it puts FaZe in, I think, a great position going into the year, because all of a sudden you're not the number one team anymore, at least as considered right now. I think it'd be stupid not to still put you guys in like the S tier, but still, I think it makes things more exciting, really, if FaZe lose early like this.
Yeah, I mean, I won't overreact because, like, obviously we lost to Florida last year, and if you guys remember, I think we got 302. I think we got kind of pushed in at that kickoff last year, and then we didn't drop a series for like 2 months after that. So like, I know, I think in practice we were playing like unbelievable, like amazing. I feel like I still feel like we're the best hardpoint team, but obviously the other two modes just weren't there. And I honestly I thought the loss was the best thing that could ever happen to us or happen to us at the event, because even though I'm a firm believer that event actually means something, like it shows that you have potential going into the year, it shows you put in hard work. Like I think that is a chip, and I think like that event means stuff. I'm also happy we lost then, because I would rather lose then than like stage 1, stage 2. Because now like it kind of opens your eyes to like, look, like you can't coast in this league. You can never coast. You can never give ground. You can never take days off just to take days off. You can't fall behind, because the second you fall behind, there's so much talent in this league, you're just gonna get stepped on. So obviously like we had a strong map 1, map 2, we could have easily won that. Map 3, actually, it's span on map 2. We there was some errors on defense. There were some errors on offense. Seattle played really, really well. I would have been shocked if Seattle didn't win after seeing some of their plays they were putting on the map. Map 3, like if you go back and look, like round 1 and 2, we were actually in the driver's seat and then just tossed away advantages. And like that's something you just can't do. Like when you have the foot on somebody's neck, you have to finish it. I remember on our offense, we captured the boat point. We were pushed up in ring. We had full control. We actually had 2 people on the point. We let them retake ring, and then we got spawn trapped for this round. And it's like that one mistake of letting them retake ring messed up the entire round. And like when a team has that much talent like that, they're obviously gonna take advantage of that and win it. And then in map 4, we were actually up 150 to 72 on P1. We got the first 2 kills. We got the first set of kills with 50 seconds left on P1. 9 times out of 10, that's a 200 to 70 point lead going into P2, right? And that's usually when the other team gets a 50, and then you go into P3 and it gets mixy at the end of the rotation. But we won the first wave of kills, absolutely just tossed in the second wave of kills because of just challenging and not correctly funneling. And then you find yourself in a hole going into after P2. And those are things like small mistakes that I would like to make in a preseason match and not in the actual regular season match. But those are things that obviously you learn from. You see that on the film. You're able to not ever do that, like those micro mistakes again. You start working together as a unit. You put a little, bulletin board material, because now everyone's kind of second guessing like what to expect of you. And I think that was something that our team definitely needed and like needs to reach our peaks, because I feel like every time that's ever happened to us, we always come back stronger and like hungrier. So hopefully we're able to take that, because you never want to see another team win and to lose the way obviously we did. It sucks, puts salt in the wound. So hopefully we're able to rebound pretty strong going into stage 1.
The question is Seattle your kryptonite?
Look, I said before, like going last podcast, like we had the toughest round 1 matchup, hands down. Whether it was London or Seattle, I didn't want to play either of them. So like, I don't think Seattle's our kryptonite. I just think the way that like Lamar runs
is haunting you.
Yeah, the way Lamar runs his teams, it's really structured. So if you're making mistakes, he feeds off that, and like that's the environment. Like he makes the game simpler for his teams. So if you're making mistakes, that team knows how to jump on it and then find the advantages. And then obviously he's not gonna make, like, that team won't make as many mistakes as other teams will, just because of how well they're coached, how well their IGL, how like like their young guys aren't like real egotistical. Like you're not seeing them this ego chow everything. You're seeing them actually conform to the structure, which is amazing. You don't really get that a lot out of young players going into their first like fully professional team on land in front of a crowd. So that whole like I knew we were in trouble. Like once you started seeing some of the errors going around on the S&D, but obviously that team is going to be. I think they're a top 3 team, and I don't think anyone's should underestimate them. But hopefully we're able to get one back. The next time we play them.
Yeah, what do you think, Marky? Like, I kind of wanted to talk in a few minutes' time, but I think it probably goes into too much depth. But kind of like where FaZe will sit now in terms of power ranking conversation, because most team will have you guys number 1. Like, where do FaZe go? Because I saw Enable put them at like number 5, and I thought that was probably a bit too reactionary. But then, then again, it's like, okay, FaZe on that performance aren't quite where they should be, but to me, it's hard to put them outside of the S tier.
Yeah, no, definitely not outside of the S tier. I think that 5 is crazy. FaZe are always going to be a contender forever. And I think that right now, from what we've seen in practice, FaZe are definitely a top team. And I think that like Max said, they're going to come back with a vengeance. So it's on us to it's on us to continue to work hard to try and hopefully stop that happening. But at the end of the day, I think that they're going to be a top team forever.
I was actually just talking about us, like our 2 teams. Actually, is like it's actually crazy how consistent our 2 teams are. Like your team is actually, I would say, by far the most consistent team in the CDL. Like if you guys aren't first, you guys are always second and third. Like you guys are always at the top. So like it's honestly pretty crazy that when everyone does power rankings for the past 2 years, it's always been like us 2, and like I would say like Texas, I would say like Seattle's they're like definitely up there now, but it's pretty crazy like how consistent those our 2 teams have been on that front.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there a tournament your team, Atlanta, has won where you didn't go in, or you went in with the mindset that you were the best and like you made those mistakes but still won the event?
Oh yeah. There was one stage last year where I was watching our hardpoint. Like in this game, I'm a firm believer that holds are actually really important. Like everyone and their mother can break in this game. So if you're rotating, you have a full setup. If you aren't fully holding that, like especially on Money Hills, like you're not gonna win. So like last year, we had a couple of times where on some of the key maps like Raid, on Garrison, we weren't holding correctly, and like they were major red flags. And every time we would go in, it would be like this team's really like, I remember Dallas was really good on St. Petro on breaking P2 and P3, and at the time we were actually really weak at it at holding P2 and P3, and I was like shit, and like somehow we scraped it out and won. But like usually like the problem is when you're winning a lot of practices, you aren't put in a position where you're losing. So you have to learn from your victories, or like learn from winning practice. We'll learn from doing like you gotta like, even though you won, you gotta like pinpoint the mistakes you made along the way. So like that's something our team's really good at. That team like usually we're able to like reset pretty quickly, but usually it's just translating what you're doing in practice into the matches. So as long as we do that, we'll always be a top team. But you always got to put, again, you always have to have your foot down on the pedal, because there are legitimately this year probably like 8 teams that can win a championship, and probably like a lot of them could even make it there. And I wouldn't be shocked to see any team in the finals this year. But like if you put, like, just as in like Modern Warfare, as in Cold War, you take your foot off the pedal for 1 second, there's a team that is going to be there's a team that's always going to be hungry. There's going to be a team that is loaded with talent that is just waiting for you to slip up for them to like take the crown. So that's like something, yeah, like it could happen any day to anyone. Is if you weren't 100% there, any team can beat you. So that's something like obviously we're gonna be working on. Back at practice today. Yeah, just getting ready for stage 1, and you just gotta take day by day. Fix your issues, learn to keep improving like chemistry, communication, learning what not to do, what to do on the map, because even this game's still pretty fresh, so you're still learning a lot of like the ins and outs, like special things in hardpoint. Like people think like by the end of the year the game's mostly figured out. Like I remember last year in Raid we didn't learn something. Like we figured out something new in stage 5. like going into champs. So like always trying to be creative, always trying to learn the game, always taking every practice seriously, VOD review, just going along. You just got to keep putting in the work and trying to be as hungry as you can.
Yeah, I was super impressed by the record that a couple of you guys have had, to be honest, because I think it was, well, so right now you're on a 6-event win streak, Toronto are, of making top 3 or better. I just went back to look like what kind of the streak is, because of course nowadays it's different compared to way back in the day. Like I was looking at the complexity run into Evil Geniuses, and they went 13 events in a row in the grand finals, and 15 events in a row in top 3 or better, which I thought was pretty insane. So that's going to be a tough task to handle. I guess that was over 2 different rosters there, so maybe it counts for a little bit different. But let's talk briefly about the whole one-way smoke drama, because this was quite exciting. As soon as the game finished, I mean, it was Toronto versus LA Thieves. There was talk about the fact that Draza in one round seemingly deliberately saw, I think it was Clinics, dropped a smoke at his feet and could kind of see through it, right? Basically what people used to really piss me off in Black Ops 4, no, not Black Ops 4, Black Ops Cold War. If you played Black Ops Cold War GBs and smokes were there, like, oh my, there's nothing that annoyed me more, apart from playing USS Texas in World War II, than when you get in a gunfight with a guy and you've hit a couple shots, he drops the smoke, and you can't see him. He's vanished off the face of the earth. He's hiding in a corner. He can see you, can't see him. No aim assist. Bloody hell, what a nightmare. And it seems to be almost similar in this game in a way where you can kind of see someone if you're standing in the middle of it. It's a strange one. It seems some of the rumor had it that most players weren't kind of abusing this. They were throwing the smoke to block off a lane, to hit an angle, to cut off a sniper rifle. Whereas it obviously can be used in this way, where player just drops it and uses it for an advantage in the gunfight. Which, can you really stop that? Is this something you can actively GA? Because this seemed to be kind of like, I don't know, it seemed to be kind of blatant that he was using it deliberately, whereas some people have said, look, if someone uses it, but it wasn't necessarily deliberate, then how can you tell? Therefore, how can you GA that? Do we just need the smokes to be fixed, but are they going to be? All these questions. Kenny was getting in the mix as well, but like, what were your kind of thoughts on that, Austin? Because I know there was some talk about this. The smokes are broken. How can you GA it? Do they have to just get banned? I don't know what happens. You're on me or something.
Yeah. That's something where, like, I don't know, like, you're never going to be able to fully GA it, because even in that instance, when Draza made that play, it kind of looked like he almost thought he had a stun or whatever, and like once
Yeah,
go
exactly. That's
with
a
the player.
good question.
And then it makes you question, like, was he really trying to do that? Like, you never know, and like that's why you can't really attack people or defend people, because you don't really know. At the end of the day, like, it's up to obviously the developers to fix that issue and just to make that not possible. For us, I mean, like, for the league, not us, but like for everybody, I think smokes are an important part of making S&D a little bit more creative, and like being, I think, if a smoke is 100% working, like, it's good for S&D. So I don't want to take that out of the game, especially because, like, I like using smokes to fake. I like using smokes to block off snipers and certain power spots or ARs. I like being able to learn new lineups for that, to figure out ways to get smokes in certain places. So I definitely don't want to see that go. I don't want to see, obviously, snipers go. So it's a tough spot, because you'll never know if a player did it on purpose. If they didn't, obviously there is some times where you can see a player like purposely do that at the beginning of a round or something, but I haven't seen it much. Like, personally, I watch every single S&D, and at the time before the tournament, we were playing S&D every day, and I didn't see. I can maybe count on like one hand, like 2 fingers, the amount of times I've seen anything even questionable. So it's kind of funny we saw one at the event, but I don't think, at least I'm hoping it won't be a major issue going forward, and hopefully it gets fixed on the development side.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, that it gets fixed, is that, because at the end of the day, with these sort of things, you're going to be able to GA it or whatever, but there's going to be situations that come up where there's just sort of smoke that's randomly there and you sort of don't do it intentionally, and there's always going to be that question about it, and I think that's why it's such a controversial thing, really. I'd like to hope he didn't intentionally mean it, and he was, like you said, he was trying to throw a stun or whatever that may be. Obviously, it wasn't ideal when I seen it happen. I was hunching the desk, and rage. But honestly, it's like I think smokes are good for Call of Duty, like Austin said. I think that we all can agree that Call of Duty is at its best, especially like in terms of S&D, when there's like look at like let's use an extreme example like Black Ops 2. You had so many different like usage of different tacticals and stuff like that. It adds an extra layer of strategy, and I think that that's always good for the likes of ourselves who are wanting to create those strategies and be a part of that process. So I think that for me, I'd always love to have extra layers that add into it, but at the end of the day, it can't break the game. So hopefully these things can be fixed. I really hope that the smoke can get fixed somehow, some way.
I actually miss that about Black Ops 2, where you had like the EMP, stun, flash, nade, Semtex.
Trophies.
People even
So
use
it's like-
the sensor grenade at times. I saw sensor grenades getting chucked around in league play.
Yeah.
I
Those things
feel
were
like
OP.
having that extra element is always so important. Last night I watched some Black Ops 4, like the COD Champs final, and just seeing specialists involved as well added that extra element. I know that's quite a questionable take, but also with like the current setting in World War II, it's not really possible. But having those extra elements that just spice up the mix a little bit with COD is just, I find, very, very entertaining.
I think Valorant's showing that aspect of like the game, even though it might not be the most competitive thing, is pretty nice on the viewership side. Like people love watching that. That's why I always said like specialists were amazing for viewers. Were amazing for the league. Sucked to play against. Like I completely understand it sucked.
Yeah.
Like if you get grab slammed, you just want to like whip your controller. But like when you see somebody like when Slacked at the end of the year got really good at it and would get like a 3-piece, people would go fucking crazy, even though it's just a slam, but like it's so cool to have like that's like a highlight moment. And like nowadays, like a highlight moment is like somebody popping off for like 3 or 4 kills, right? And I don't know, like I felt like the specialists were just so unique and just so different. Like when you saw like a Tempest play, or when you saw like a cool Vision play where you were able to sniff somebody out on a rotation, or like I don't know, there was just so many. Like there was a TAC 5 play that LA or the 100 Thieves, they just posted a play about it. It was like the final hill rotation. They were like 240. Kenny pops attack 5, and they all had the extra health, and they like full swept. They got full 4 down, pushed forward, and like ended up winning. I don't know. Like I think those plays are cool.
Yeah, having those like extra abilities for when the game's getting a little bit stagnant is like, and like how good you use them in those moments, I find was like a really cool element to have.
It adds another element to the metagame as well. It's like, okay, does this guy have that? Like, how long do we have to wait? Is he going to pop it on this hill? Should I pop it now? My teammate's just died. Is it worth it? All these questions come up, and the teams that make those decisions the best often win, which is an element which you don't see anymore. And I agree with Austin. Like, even though Valorant, a lot of the abilities are kind of crazy to watch from a viewer size. Like, whenever Jet pops the knives, like, you're always looking, right? You always want to see if she's going to pop a piece. So, yeah, maybe that's something, right? Lion's always here with the takes that hopefully people are listening to. The final thing that we want to talk about in this episode is just kind of some of the aftermath, really. It was a big topic that was brought up by Clayster and Envoy yesterday about the way the precautions were done at the event, at least in terms of like, well, basically protecting the players to the best that they could have. Now, there's all sorts of angles on this that you could possibly look at because, while yes, the CDL should probably have done a better job in, maybe listening to the players on some of these concerns, because I think one of the big ones that Envoy was raising was that there was like talent, stuff like that obviously were backstage with the pros, but they would be out in the crowd, like taking pictures with fans and stuff, and then obviously mixing and then coming backstage with the pros. Like that's obviously probably not ideal. And then you've got the angle that, a lot of the pros were probably in the bar on Sunday night anyway. So there's the player's responsibility and there's also the CDL's responsibility, right? So obviously you want some consistency here. At the same time, I don't think if we can, I really want to have fans in the venue if we can. I know that things feel slightly different right now in the UK than maybe they do in some states in the US. But obviously Canada's another different story in its entirety. But for me, I don't really have an issue if the local restrictions say that you can have fans and these are the precautions. I don't really have an issue with the CDL following that, because at the end of the day, like, we want to get back to normal when we can, and if the local regulations say that we can, then I don't necessarily see what's too wrong with that. Especially because we need to make money at the end of the day. Like, the CDL can't just sit around forever and have events with no fans and not selling any tickets, and the organizations themselves don't get any ticket sales. Like, at some point they have to see some sort of return, because the pandemic did not help things from a bottom line perspective for these organizations that were promised to be making revenue by year 5, year 10 or whatever. Now those projections are being pushed back massively, and I'm sure the CDL wants to do the best they can to balance all the stakeholders, which is not easy. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my take. It's a really complicated one. I think that the pros definitely have the points, but at the same time, I want what's best for the community as a whole. I'll throw it to you, Mark, first, because I guess you're in Canada right now. It's a different situation depending on where you live.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously kind of a lot more difficult for us. We have to go across the border to get there to Texas for the event. So I'm not going to lie, I would rather we didn't do that at this stage, because obviously it's probably at its peak right now, and hopefully things are improving as we go on. But at the end of the day, we had to do it, of course, and I understand that the league wants to, start producing these LAN events. So I think it was obviously great that we were able to get there. We had no issues getting to and from Canada. So thankfully we're here. Thankfully we were there. And thankfully we're back in Canada now. So we're ready for practice again. But obviously right now in Canada too, it's pretty much locked down. So you can't really go out anywhere. You can't go to restaurants. So we've just been, grinding away. That's pretty much all we can do at the minute. And there's a snowstorm going on right now. It's been just continuous snow for the last 2 weeks, really. When I left Toronto to go to Arlington, it was snowing, and when I got back, it was snowing. And that's pretty much all that's going on right now.
Wow.
Bro, we're about to get smoked this weekend too.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, we're getting like 2 feet
Yeah.
of snow on Saturday or like Friday, Saturday.
I like some
Yep.
snow.
Oh, I'm ready.
Again,
I'm close to you guys, so I think you guys are gonna get hit too. But
What's snow
Lovely.
like?
yeah, lucky. But
How's that lucky? I want to try it.
but I'm one of the people who like I obviously understand like COVID. Like my mom works in a hospital. She's on the COVID floor. My dad works for a town nearby. So like COVID is crazy. Like I don't want to take any risks. At the same time, I know what the league is having lands. They're having like fans there. I do understand both. I feel like everyone can do better. I feel like the league can do better on the precaution side. Fans can do better by always wearing masks, but also the league for enforcing masks, especially when people are so close to the front line on near where the players are. I think players can do I think like teams probably should like the way like Valorant was doing it is like you can't really leave the hotel until after the tournament. So you're like you're working. You're not going out. You're not doing like dinners. I don't think you're allowed to have team dinners. You're not allowed to obviously go out to bars. You're not allowed to go out and do that stuff. And I think like that should be something that should be happening at the major lands, because I don't want any team to have to, deal with that, with like the results of something going on. I want every team to be at full strength and be healthy and be safe and have these tournaments go on without a hitch. So I understand why the league was doing the testing protocols. Like right now, like 5 days ago, the NFL is not testing any player anymore unless you have symptoms. The NHL is not testing players that are vaccinated. Like you just don't get tested. So there are sports leagues right now currently that are doing, like the CDL is doing more than what some sports leagues are doing. They're doing less, but obviously that's why I see like the NFL, like they're obviously not testing those players at all. No one, unless you were having like something going on. Fans are getting in. Some stadiums are obviously you can just get in no matter what. Some need vax cards. Like here in Massachusetts, you need vax cards for anything. But like I would hope that CDL doesn't do like the basics, like the minimum that states and the CDC are requiring. I hope they do go above and beyond, because we have players from many different countries that if they want to go home, or if they like even you guys in Toronto, if you guys just want to go back to where your facility is, like obviously there are a lot of extenuating circumstances. So hopefully the CDL can do better, teams can do better, fans can do better, everyone can just do better and be safe. So Major 1 and all future lands can just go smoothly, and we can all have a good time, but still be safe together and enjoy land Call of Duty for as long as we can. With especially with the world going on right now.
Thoughts, Lion?
Could have said it better.
You chilling?
I don't really have many thoughts because here it's so different. I don't really know what it's like to be, in the fire with COVID. I mean, it's kind of coming to that way now, but I do agree with Austin. I think just taking the precautions to be safe is obviously the best way to do it. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, but I feel like we just kind of have to enforce it to make sure everyone's safe. But yeah, here it's just like it barely exists, boys. We just have to wear a mask sometimes and then sign in and we're good.
Yeah, it's like you can't say anything without it immediately being controversial. So I think we can leave it there. I think a good discussion. Marky, thanks a lot for coming on. Really appreciate your company. Anything you'd like to say to those watching Toronto fans out there? Because cracking result to start the season. Obviously, you're looking to end it in the same manner that you couldn't quite pull off last year.
Yeah, no, shout out to the fans who have been supporting us on social media. Shout out to the 1 or 2 fans in the crowd. Amazing.
I saw a few of them.
Amazing. But honestly, no, like it was obviously a fun time being in Texas again. Been there quite a few times now at this point. Was there more recently for the esports awards, so that venue, I'm sick of it. But
Back there in a month.
but thanks for having me on too. Appreciate it. Obviously watch all your guys' stuff, so it's cool to get to talk to you guys about Call of Duty for a little bit.
Always a good time. Anyway, that's where we'll leave it. Thanks all for tuning in the chat, on the YouTube after the fact, all the podcast platforms as well. Appreciate a like. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube, I don't know what you're playing at because the amount of banging content that's coming out is beyond belief. All the pre-kickoff interviews, so much stuff we've got planned over the coming weeks as well. Austin's got this 1v100 thing cracking on with Sensor, and the first episode was Sensor. More to come on that front. Yeah, there you go. Links in the chat right now. But also, I mean, if you're watching it on YouTube, you're already there, so press the big red button. Thanks all for watching. That was episode 50. Thanks, Marky, for joining us. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.